Now I know what made Marvin Gaye want to holler. Yeah, I feel you, DMX. They gonna make me lose my mind. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the page. My name is Reese Waters, and I'm troubled. An Oklahoma Supreme Court has dismissed a lawsuit filed by the last known survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, who were seeking reparations for the destruction of their community. This ruling represents a significant moment in the ongoing quest for justice for the survivors and their descendants, highlighting the complexities and roadblocks thrown up when trying to address historical racial injustices through the legal system. You know, the system that we use to address every other injustice in society. But when it comes to racial injustice, all of a sudden things are a little different. There's nothing just the victims of terrorism and mass violence. Leslie Benningfield Randall, 109, and Viola Ford Fletcher, 110, both survivors of the massacre, saw their lawsuit dismissed by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. The court upheld a lower court's ruling, stating that the grievances related to the massacre, despite being legitimate, did not fall under the state's public nuisance statute. So what does it fall under then? Huh? Is there a terrorism statute? Huh? Is there a hate crime statute? I know it wasn't in 1920 because you refused to even admit that was a thing. But this was not one, but two courts actually saw fit to dismiss this because it didn't fall under a specific statute. So you let me know what statute it falls under, unless there's not a statute that addresses terrorizing black people. Is that it? Now, this decision potentially marks the end of the legal road for Randall and Fletcher, who would hope for their day in court to seek reparations for the suffering and losses endured by their community. And by kicking the can down the road for a woman that's 109 and a woman that's 110, your clear strategy of wait them out becomes immediately clear. An all-American strategy. We'll just wait them out. What is it that you tell us whenever black people at large ask for reparations? Well, we don't know who the descendants are, and it's too many people now, and it's been so much time. Here you have the actual survivors, the actual victims of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and still you find some legalese way to not give them their proper remunerations. That is where we're at. Wait them out. Now we know. Now, Randall and Fletcher, who were children during the massacre, had hoped the court would recognize the ongoing impact of the event, which devastated the Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street. They had testified about the massacre before a congressional committee, sharing their personal experiences of one of America's worst episodes of racial violence. Their testimonies brought national attention to the massacre's long-term effects on the African-American community in Tulsa and the continued struggle for justice.
What do you remember about the time?
People getting killed and houses, property, schools, churches, and stores getting destroyed with fire. And then someone in the neighborhood saying to leave the neighborhood. If not, we're going to kill all of the black people. It just stays with me, you know. It's just the fear that I have lived in Tulsa since, but I don't sleep all night living there.
The lawsuit filed in 2020 when there were 3, by the way. Now they are 2, and that's where you see the effects of wait them out. The lawsuit was an attempt to hold the state accountable for the massacre's lasting effects. The plaintiffs couldn't appeal, though, to the U.S. Supreme Court because their case was based on state law. And there I would ask you, what would be the point of appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court? Because we know exactly who sits on the U.S. Supreme Court. If they are coming for Brown versus Board of Education, I can only imagine what Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito would have to say about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Well, what did y'all do? Huh? What? It sound like you might have brought it on yourselves. Hey, do we have a mutual combat law? We have a mutual combat law that we could retroactively apply to the 1920s. The way you will bend yourselves backwards to do wrong by black people is insane. The Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled that issues related to generational inequities stemming from the massacre should be addressed by policymakers, not courts. Way to pass the buck. That is a way to pass the buck. So now I understand that when it comes to historical injustice, we can't address them directly like you would do in a court. When it comes to any other injustice, we just have to innocently wait for a legislature or a policymaker to, out of the goodness of their heart, just bestow upon us what was taken away. Is that what it is? Now, the ruling underscores the limitations of the judicial system in addressing complex historical injustices that have long-term socioeconomic impacts. Actually, did I say historical injustices? Sorry, I meant black injustices. Now, I will give credit where it's due. After the end of the Tuskegee experiment, in which 399 black men with syphilis were left untreated to study the progression of the disease between 1932 and 1972, the government reached a $10 million out-of-court settlement with the victims and their families in 1974. In 1994, the state of Florida agreed to a reparations package worth around $3.36 million to the victims of the Rosewood Massacre in 1923. And while most American states practiced one or another form of eugenics during the 20th century with forced sterilizations of people deemed unfit, only one state, North Carolina, set up a reparations program. The state sterilized about 7,600 people, most of whom are no longer living, but passed a $10 million reparations program in 2013 that should give the more than 177 living victims somewhere in the range of $50,000. You know how bad you got to be for North Carolina, Tennessee, and Florida to look at you like you really should do the right thing? North Carolina, Tennessee, and Florida are looking at you like, what's wrong with you, Oklahoma? Why don't you do right by them? And it is a really good thing that they got that passed in Florida before DeSantis came in, because I could only imagine when he was, oh no, we can't correct that racial injustices because it would make white children feel bad. Yeah, it would make white children feel bad. So we can't give back what was taken away. You know, yeah, the goods that they're currently taking advantage of. Oh, but wait, there's more. America has seen fit to give reparations for Japanese internment camps. They've seen fit to even give reparations for Holocaust survivors. Oklahoma themselves in 1996 paid the families of the Oklahoma City bombing $50 million to assist them as victims of terrorism and mass violence for something that happened in 1995. So let me get my calculator out, because that happened in 1995 and they got their money in 96. Okay, so this happened in 1923, and they've been trying to get redress ever since 1923. I'm trying to figure out who would be first in line on that. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Who would be first in line? Because you have actual survivors, so you can't even hit me with the not direct impact. So you can't even hit me with that. Like, you got direct. I'm just trying to figure out what that line was looking like for reparations. I mean, that's crazy. Now, lead attorney DeMario Solomon Simmons addressed profound disappointment, as well he should, calling the massacre a state-sponsored atrocity and criticizing the decision as a setback for racial justice. He stated the legal team would petition for reconsideration and urge the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the effects of 1921 and their lasting impact on the Greenwood community. Now, Tulsa officials stated their commitment to economic development in North Tulsa and Greenwood and emphasized ongoing efforts to support the affected communities through various initiatives aimed at revitalizing the area. In other words, we'll do right by you as long as we can find a way to make money too. Yeah. If we can find a way to make money too, then we'll throw y'all a little change. Yeah, I know it's your change, but we just gonna hold it till we can find a way where we can make it into more change for us. Y'all ain't slick. Greenwood was a thriving community before being destroyed in 1921 by a white mob, resulting in the deaths of up to 300 African Americans and significant property damage. The massacre not only caused immediate devastation, but also erased generational wealth that had been built in a time of significant racial oppression. No one was held accountable for the massacre, and survivors received no compensation. The event was long buried in history, only coming to public attention decades later. The lawsuit aimed to highlight the continued economic and social disparities resulting from the massacre, arguing that the damage done over 2 days in 1921 had long-lasting repercussions that still affect the community today. But wait, It gets worse, Oklahoma.
The community did rebuild after the 1921 massacre, and then this highway, built right through the heart of the district as part of federal highway acts in the 60s, dealt it a final blow.
The highway separated the business district from traffic flow, from access.
What does this highway represent to you?
The second destruction of Black Wall Street.
Defendants, including Tulsa County officials and the Oklahoma Military Department, argued that the plaintiffs lacked standing to sue and that the governmental agencies involved were protected by sovereign immunity at the time of the massacre. They contended that holding current entities accountable for past actions under today's legal standards would set a problematic precedent. So let's take those one at a time. The plaintiffs lack the standing to sue. If survivors and direct victims lack the standing to sue, who has the standing to sue? What does Oklahoma courts look like when an actual direct victim doesn't have the standing to sue? Then you said the governmental agencies were protected by sovereign immunity at the time of the massacre. Wow. I wonder if that was something that was communicated to the people, that there was sovereign immunity and that they had absolutely no expectations of justice whatsoever. I wonder what other agencies are protected by sovereign immunity and which has victimized people and people have seen fit to give them reparations and redress, right? We don't always look at the sovereign immunity. Sometimes we do the right thing because we know that somebody has been wrong. But in this particular instance, we're pointing to the sovereign immunity. You also contended that holding current entities accountable for past actions under today's legal standards would set a problematic precedent. Well, it only sets a problematic precedent if those agencies in the past had, terrorized and caused the deaths of 300 black people. Then it only sets a problematic precedent. If they were decent, it wouldn't be a problem, now would it? I don't understand why we have laws at all if these are the excuses they are giving to not do right by these folks. Now, in an emotional joint statement, Randall and Fletcher addressed their determination to seek justice despite the legal challenges. They emphasized their long journey and the importance of holding the perpetrators accountable. And their resilience in the face of legal setbacks underscores the broader struggle for justice and recognition of historical wrongs. Solomon Simmons argued before the Oklahoma Supreme Court, highlighting the plaintiffs' unique position as actual survivors of the massacre and the ongoing denial of responsibility by those involved. He stressed that the massacre wasn't just a historical event, but a source of continued trauma and economic disparity for the survivors and their descendants. And you can see the emotion in the reaction of founder of Black Wall Street Times, Nehemiah D. Frank, after the verdict was read.
I'm so fucking angry right now. I hate doing camera shit. I hate it, man. Don't even have the capacity to even talk about this shit. But I'm fucking angry. And the sad thing is I already knew what the fuck ruling was gonna be. Because Oklahoma is that place. It is that place where black people see little justice in that place.
The dismissal marks a significant moment in the survivors' pursuit of justice, reflecting broader challenges and addressing historical racial injustices through the legal system. The ruling by the Oklahoma Supreme Court underscores the roadblocks to prevent redress for historical wrongs and highlights the need for comprehensive approaches that involve both legal and policy solutions. The survivors' journey, marked by their advanced age and the long delay in seeking justice, illustrates the enduring impact of the Tulsa Race Massacre on their lives and the lives of their descendants. As the fight for justice continues, it remains crucial to acknowledge and address the historical context and ongoing consequences of such tragic events. The efforts of Randall Fletcher and their legal team continues to shed light on the enduring legacy of the Tulsa Race Massacre and the need for persistent advocacy in the pursuit of justice. If not them, then who? If they can't get justice, what expectation can any of us ever have for reparation. And you know who I blame? You know who I blame? Andrew Johnson. I blame Andrew Johnson because it was him who wrecked Lincoln's Reconstruction Plan that prevented us from getting our 40 acres and a mule in the first place. And he was hoping that America would be racist in perpetuity, that they would never see fit to do right by his wrong. And you know what? He was right.